And welcome to a very special edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff DeForrest, and I couldn't be any more excited than I am to begin the show with these two gentlemen that you see on your screen. And you're going to be seeing a lot of both of these guys if you haven't already. One is probably sold out Madison Square Garden more often than Billy Joel. And of course, my good friend Peter Kahn was the former manager of the year in all of professional boxing, and he latched onto a good one as we introduce you first to the great Xander Zayas, number one WBO contender and mandatory championship challenger to the towering Inferno, Sebastian Fundora. And Peter Kahn joining us. First off, Xander, how are you? Congratulations on all your success.
Difo, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm excited for this new steps that I'm taking into my championship fight, and I'm just excited to have such a great manager next to me that is gonna guide me and help me through it all.
All right, we want to track a little bit of the story in the background first. And Xander, you started, your mother brought you, this isn't like a Danny Garcia Puerto Rican boxer thing where the father is the dominant figure. Your mother brought you to the gym at what, 6 years old?
5 years old, yes, 5 years old. When I'm back in Puerto Rico, I was being victim of bully, and she brought me in just to learn how to defend myself, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the sport.
And you started right away winning and establishing yourself. Peter, of course, Top Rank Boxing signed Xander, I think, out of the crib. I don't know. He might have still been in embryo when good friend Brad Jacobs got wind of this gentleman and said, "Hey, well, we got to sign this kid." How did the professional career get launched, and how did you guys get together?
So he started. He signed with Top Rank at 16 years old, youngest fighter ever in the history of Top Rank in their 60-year career of having unbelievable fighters such as Muhammad Ali and the recently passed George Foreman. Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. I mean, such great fighters in history. And so, like you mentioned, our friend Brad Jacobs, I went to Brad and I said, look, there's a special fighter. He's young, and we should have this conversation. The way that I met Xander was through Javier Centeno, who is one of, in my personal opinion, one of the top trainers in boxing. And, you always get those questions. Is it the fighter that makes the trainer? Is it the trainer that makes the fighter? Look, and no disrespect to some of these great trainers like Abel Sanchez and Freddie Roach, but you give me Triple G and Manny Pacquiao, I honestly just put water in their mouth and tell them to go. Okay. And that's no disrespect. These guys are very good trainers. But my point is that, a guy like Javier Centeno, who I think is underrated and overlooked right now, I think people are going to respect him a lot more when Xander goes in there and becomes world champion. Javier is the trainer responsible for the George Kambosos victory over Teofimo Lopez. And we have a lot of fighters together. I've known him a long time. He came to me when Xander was probably like 14, and he said, I have a generational kid in my gym right now. He's 14 years old. He's winning these national championships. There's just something about him. He's like, there's just something about him. He's special. And I just kept in touch with Javier, and they just keep winning national championships. And then Xander's parents, when the time came, they said, well, what do you think we should do? Because Xander was missing the age cutoff for the Olympics. So he wasn't going to be able, even if he was good enough to qualify, he would not have been able to participate in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Now, of course, we didn't know that COVID was going to happen, and we didn't know that the decision we were making was the best decision we were going to make. But we knew that he would have had to wait another 4 years. And who knows, by that time with Paris and it's just too much stagnation. Was he going to do another 200 amateur fights?
Yeah.
How many more national championships? So Top Rank immediately signed him, and the youngest fighter ever. We had to go to court.
We had to go to court
in Nevada, in Las Vegas.
My first and only time in court, actually.
His mother had to go in front of a judge and say, yes, I'm aware of all of this, and I agree to all of this. And so that is how this happens. He made his pro debut just weeks less than a month after
Yeah.
his 17th birthday in Reno, Nevada, against
Genesis Win.
Genesis Win, first round knockout. And here we are, 22 years old, 21-0, 14 KOs, 13 KOs,
14 KOs, something like that. Yes, I don't even remember my record.
and now he's officially, as of Sunday night, the WBO sent a letter that is mandated and ordered him and Sebastian Fundora to enter a 20-day negotiating period and to fight for Fundora's WBO junior middleweight title.
Yes, sir.
It's funny, Peter, you mentioned the connection with Centeno, who I didn't even know there was a boxing gym in Davie. I didn't know there was an arena in Davie where we saw Xander fight a couple of bouts back. But I happened to be at the fight the night that Manny Pacquiao sort of put himself on the map in America. It was deep on the undercard of an Oscar De La Hoya and a setup fight against a guy named Javier Castillejo. They were begging the media to come out and cover this thing because it looked like it was going to be a brick. And on the undercard, it was Manny Pacquiao fighting Ledwaba, who was a fighter from Ghana who was undefeated, thought to be the second coming, smaller version of Azuma Nelson. And I remember in the post-fight press conference after Pacquiao knocked him out and controlled the fight and looked brilliant, interviewing Freddie Roach. He was up talking to the media. And he said, well, how long have you been working with this guy? He said, he just walked in off the streets about a week ago. So the dynamic, though, of being nurtured along by a certain trainer, Xander, how much more valuable was that? I mean, you can bounce around, and we see fighters change trainers all the time, and kind of like tennis players change coaches. But how much did that mean to you to start with, well, this was obviously after you were in Puerto Rico, but to find Centeno right away, and in what ways did he help you and change your game so you were able to adapt to the pros?
And it means a lot because I feel like Peter said, not just fighters or just trainers make fighters or fighters make trainers. I think it's a combination of both, having the right connection, being able to connect outside of the ring and the gym. I can call him at any given time, ask him for advice, help, anything that I need. He's like a second dad to me. So coming out of Puerto Rico and being able to find him right away was a blessing. It was a blessing, just a great guy, Puerto Rican like me, that understood where I came from and what I wanted to accomplish, and obviously helped me to develop into the fighter that I am today. In every way, shape, and form, I feel like I've evolved, I've become better, and that's thanks to obviously my hard work and Coach Javier Centeno.
And he has it all, Peter. I mean, I watched your last fight, Xander, and I've seen a couple of them now. Since our other mutual friend, Brett Telsler, the agent of the Stars, said, you got to see this guy, Xander Zayas. And I thought, that's Xander Zayas, who's that? And then I saw the fight that you had in Davie and a couple of your fights at Madison Square Garden. This last one, though, was a clinic. And you seized control. I mean, maybe at the stare down. I'm not sure, but and this was an undefeated fighter. Probably credit him. If he wasn't a tough professional, he doesn't go 9 rounds. But what an awesome display! I mean, how did you develop this arsenal? And did you have it from the beginning? And then after Xander addresses that, Peter, I mean, that had to be part of what you saw when you witnessed him at 16, because this is a special set of skills that you have, Xander Zayas.
I feel like, in a way, I was born with natural talent. I was very talented and gifted in the boxing world from the beginning. My mom kind of knew I had it in me. Had to work, had to develop those skills, but when it comes to fighting, it's natural. It's nature to me. I know what to do. There's no new punches. There's no new combinations. It's just the same thing over and over again. And once you start downloading that information in your opponents, and then you start seeing the same pattern, you kind of pick up and start making your own adjustments. So obviously, again, having a great team, great corner behind me that allows me and helps me to see those openings and adjustments that I need to be making during a fight, it's very helpful.
There are always critics, naturally, in boxing. And I guess, Peter, and Xander, you've seen some of this stuff on social media, which has really expanded that level of criticism. And the people, might be saying things, and even before this fight, did you feel, Peter and Xander, that it was important to get a knockout there at Madison Square Garden because that was one thing that was being questioned, caliber of opposition as you approach the championship level. How did you guys go about managing that, Peter, and addressing those things, or were they even important to you? Important
Well, first of all,
consideration.
Slava Spomer was number 10 or 11 in the world ratings, also 20-0. There were people that were betting on Spomer to win this fight. There were people that were coming into this thinking that this was going to be an upset.
They're broke today, by the way, those guys.
Well, yeah, those people that saw Roy Jones Jr. in his corner thought, oh, there's something going on here. But Xander prepares the same for every fight. His training camp is the same. The team is the same from day one. His fight week preparation is the same. We don't have an entourage. There's literally, I think, 6 of us in the dressing room. It is Xander, his father Orlando, Javier Centeno, Mike Basil, one of the best cut men in boxing, myself, and Ivana Williams. We call her Cubby, so I forget her name sometimes. She's been with us because she is physical therapist. So literally the same 6 people. These are the same 6 people that have been with him every fight and in the same pre-fight rituals, and have seen him develop from 17 years old to 22 years old. And look, and I've always said this to Xander. I said, when you get to the top, it bottlenecks, and he remembered that. He used that phrase too.
Yes, sir.
And I will tell you, before every fight, Jeff, I say the same thing to him. We have a ritual, and I start with a journey of 1,000 miles.
Starts with one step.
Starts with one step, a single step, and this is going to be step number 22.
Yes, sir.
And I then tell him,
be the boss.
Be the boss.
Little raging bull there.
Well, look, this is not badminton. Okay.
Yeah.
I remind him every fight, this guy's not his friend. This guy knows what he signed up for. And this guy wants to put him out of business, plain and simple. And he gets in that mindset. And you asked me, like, what we saw early on, the maturity, not just from a boxing IQ standpoint, but as a person. He's always been a very mature person since the day I've met him. And that's just translated into everything. People want to ask, about how fighters develop and what you do. Everything that we've done with Xander and everything Xander's done has been geared toward development to prepare him to be a champion, not to prepare him to fight for a world title, but to prepare him to win the world title. There's a difference. A lot of guys are happy to challenge, but for us, it's about winning.
Winning, for sure.
Well, you get your shot now, Xander, and the setup was brilliant. I just watched some of the video of you with Fundora after his victory. It seemed like a relatively easy step for him. He had his share of struggles. In fact, Fundora is an amazing commodity in boxing. What is he, like 6'10"? He looks like he should be playing for the Knicks at Madison Square Garden.
He's about 6'5.5". Very, very tall guy. Actually, the tallest champion right now in boxing, even, calling the heavyweights, he's the tallest champion. Tough guy. I mean, he's a champion for a reason. He knows how to adjust. He knows how to come back. He's been knocked out before. Now he's at the top of the division. And I'm ready for the challenge. It's something that I've always said to the team, to Top Rank, to myself. I prepare myself to be ready for anybody they put in front of me. And there's no excuses. If that night comes down and I lose or I come out knowing that I give it my all. And I prepare myself to win every single time in.
Yeah, and Samson Lekovich is in his corner. He's brought a lot of fighters to prominence. In fact, I think he was the guy that discovered Manny Pacquiao originally and brought him to prominence as well. Fundora, though, when I first saw him, I thought, what the heck is this? And yet he does actually have a tough chin. I know he got knocked down and knocked out in one of his recent bouts, but He's not an easy commodity, and something that is very unusual to attack. I saw the video of you, and maybe you can take us through what it was like, and Peter, your thoughts on it too. As he comes out of his locker room and is going to, I guess, address the media afterwards, after his most recent fight, which was Saturday night in Vegas. And so you're in a position. I remember seeing Antonio Tarver screaming at Roy Jones Jr., I'm going to get you. You're up. You're ducking me. He did one of those things that you see that's very typical in boxing and especially in boxing movies. But you guys are both really nice guys. I mean, Fundora seems like a real gentleman. The interviews I've seen with him are very, very impressive. He seems like a real level-headed, down-to-earth guy and very gracious, even in defeat. You're the same way, although you haven't lost a fight yet, Xander, and we hope you never do. But take us through that whole scene where you have to confront the guy and sort of generate a little bit of momentum for this title fight, which wasn't mandated yet, but you were pretty sure it was going to happen.
Yeah, we kind of knew it was going to happen. I mean, I was the number 1 guy. I just beat a rated number 11 guy in the world, so it was just a matter of time. Obviously, him getting out the ring victorious. But on that note that you were just commenting, it was the post-fight press conference. Obviously, I go to the fight. I feel like it's very important for me to be at his fight, let him know that I'm the next guy up, that none of these guys that are calling him out are here, that I'm the one here because I know I'm going to be the mandatory guy and he needs to fight me. If not, he needs to vacate. So, he comes out the press conference and the first thing I told him was congratulations, because he deserved to be in that position. He deserved to get the recognition he's getting. So obviously, being a gentleman and him being a gentleman, also I congratulate him. And then I asked Samson if it was okay to do a face-off, because just to start building the fight, to start building the promotion. To that, his sister Gabriela Fundora, which is also a champion, actually an undisputed champion, came out and said no, there was no need to do a face-off, and we left it at that. I just laughed it off and turned around and then started doing my media, because they had a lot of questions of what was happening or what happened during that interaction. So yeah, that's all about it. I just congratulated him and asked him for a face-off, and it just didn't happen.
Came off very well, as you always do. All right, so what kind of process happens now, Peter? There's a 20-day negotiating period.
Yeah, so basically what's going to happen is Top Rank and Samson / PBC are going to negotiate. We're hopeful that there will be a deal made. We obviously would prefer to fight at Madison Square Garden, and we're confident that they're going to want to fight it in Las Vegas. The idea is that Top Rank and PBC reach a deal as to who's going to be the lead promoter. And, that usually comes down to who's going to offer the most amount of money for the other fighter. And at that point, if a deal can't be reached, they go to purse bid, which, I don't think really benefits anybody, because then it opens it up to any licensed promoter, third party that could come in and we'd rather try to find a way to work out a deal. But look, we have to leave that in the hands of Top Rank. They are Xander's promoter, and they're the ones that have developed him over the past 5 years, and they're the ones that are gonna have to put the best foot forward and make sure that they take control of this promotion. And in the end, look, it's 2 world-class fighters, champion and a number 1 contender, that are going to have to compete. And so, yeah, it's a business. But, at the same time, they're going to have to get in there and they're going to compete. And Xander's going to come out world champion, just as we've envisioned from day one.
Has the Sheik called yet? Seems like all the action is in Saudi Arabia right now.
I mean, look, there's no need to. Yeah, I mean, they reached out a few.
Oh,
months
they did.
Ago.
Okay.
Yeah, they reached out a few months ago and offered Xander to fight Virgil Ortiz on February 22nd.
Which the fans are clamoring for that matchup.
Well, look, Virgil decided to fight he went a different direction, and I thought that the Madrimov fight for him was a very good fight for him. I think that was, I mean, look, he's fighting tough fights, so good for Virgil. And then they did come back recently, and they wanted to try to get involved in the this particular fight. Which, look, if they could bring more money to the table and more exposure, and Top Rank and Samson could find a way to make it work, we're all for it.
Who wouldn't be? Yeah, I mean, they're doling out capital like there's no tomorrow here. You could have that one fight, then retire, Xander. That's for sure. All right, how much weight? And you mentioned this a couple of times. Fundora representing Mexico, and of course, you're of Puerto Rican descent and grew up in Puerto Rico, and was there in Puerto Rico until you were 11 years old, and transitioned over here to South Florida. How much weight does that carry? I mean, there's a tremendous tradition there, and I don't know. I'm going to see if you want to rank all-time Puerto Rican fighters. I mean, the ones that are famous, obviously, everybody knows Felix Tito Trinidad, Miguel Cotto, a world-class guy, and had a brilliant career and represented himself very well. I happen to know Hector Macho Camacho at the latter stages of his career, and while some people saw him as being his own worst enemy, he was a hell of a fighter. There's no question about that. Benitez was winning titles when he was, 17, 18 years old. So great history there. I guess you could throw in Danny Garcia, who we mentioned earlier, of Puerto Rican descent. How much weight does that carry with you, carrying the pride of your country? I know it was a big thing when I used to cover boxing out in L.A., Mexican fighter versus a Mexican-American, and the crowd would be evenly divided. How much importance does that and significance does that have for you, being a Puerto Rican fighter?
It's very important. Carries a lot of weight. I wouldn't say it's a weight that put pressure on me. I want to bring glory to Puerto Rico. I want to be the next world champion for them, and keep bringing them the glory that they deserve, because they're great people, and I love my people. I love my island. But obviously, I got to take it step by step. We've been, developing and growing into becoming the number one contender for the world title. Now we're here. Now we're gonna start negotiations, and I believe that after it happens, I will become a world champion. I know I will beat Sebastian Fundora, and then we'll continue to grow. And by the end of my career, wherever people want to rank me alongside those legends of the sport in Puerto Rico and all of boxing, then I'll let that to the people.
I don't want to get you in trouble, Peter. Is it fair to ask him to rank these guys? I mean, who is your favorite among
Well,
all of those Puerto Rican greats?
No, look, it's not. Yeah, I mean, Xander will tell you he loves all these guys. You
Yes, sir.
mentioned.
Of course. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge to learn from those guys. So,
But let me say this to help you out here, okay? Remember,
Didn't want to put you on the spot here.
he was born in
oh, two.
02, so his hero naturally was going to be Miguel Cotto. Trinidad was basically already pretty much
on the way out.
So it was different. So for his era as
For
a
sure.
5-year-old, of course he looks up to all the. I mean, I'm not going to talk.
No, for sure, no. But it's completely true. I look up to all these guys, but my favorite one was Miguel Cotto, because that's who I grew up watching. That's who I grew up idolizing. Obviously, Tito Trinidad has got to be in that top 2 list, because he brought a lot of glory to Puerto Rico. Wilfredo Benitez, Wilfredo Gomez, Ivan Calderon.
Amanda.
Hector Macho Camacho, Amanda. There's a lot of, I can't rank them in order, because there's so many great fighters that came out of Puerto Rico that it's almost impossible to make that list. But for sure, my top 2 has to be Miguel Cotto and Tito Trinidad.
Very diplomatically put, man. This kid's great, Peter. I mean, you can tell he's going to fit the bill, certainly representing himself well as a champion. All right, fighting in New York, I happened to be when Trinidad made his comeback. They fished Ricardo Mayorga out of some bar somewhere in Nicaragua. They threw him in the ring. We know Mayorga's good at selling a fight. He was talking about almost like Tyson-esque eating people's children, and really made a big stink. He came in with orange hair that day, so you're thinking, who is this clown? And while he could fight a little bit, he was good for a couple of rounds, and Tito beat him. And the crowd went nuts. It was in conjunction with Puerto Rican Day and the Puerto Rican Parade in New York City. Obviously a big deal. I saw Cotto at the Garden as well. The Puerto Rican fans love him. So give us a little bit of what it's like to do the ring walk in Madison Square Garden
How many times
in
now?
front of your adoring Puerto Rican fans.
Seven times. A third of his career he's fought at MSG.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's beautiful every time in. It's an amazing atmosphere. Everybody there shows me love. Everybody there goes out. Even from Puerto Rico, they fly out to go watch me, and it's incredible. It's just the energy you feel there. You don't feel it anywhere else. And I fought in Vegas. I fought in Jersey. I fought here in Florida. That energy that you receive in Madison Square Garden is incredible. It's one of a kind, and it's something that I would love to continue to happen and keep going and keep growing in that building because it has a lot of history.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those places too, New York City, where you can easily get lost in Naked City. But what's it like walking around on the streets a couple of days before the fight, Peter? And you and Xander, when you're out there,
Well,
are the fans appreciative of who you are?
A couple of days before a fight. A couple of
Yes.
days before the fight, he's doing his final weight cut. We do the obligatory fight week press conference, then does the weigh-in, and most of the time it's a cocooned environment.
Yeah.
It's like I said, very routine press conference. There are people waiting for him outside when he comes down the escalator and through the doors after the press conference and the weigh-in. And as much as we try to pull him away, he stops and takes pictures and signs things for everybody.
I'm just very I'm a type of guy that can't say no to people sometimes, at least to my fans. I always try to stop. I always try to take pictures because I was once in a little kid's position that wanted a picture with me. I wanted a picture with these guys, and I wanted them to stop. I wanted them to acknowledge me and take the picture with me and talk to me. So I try to do the same to all my fans because they're the ones that come out to my fight. They're the ones that spend their money to come watch me. They're the ones that take time away from their family, kids, mothers, fathers to go watch me fight. So for me, it's very important.
And by the way, this is out of camp Xander.
Yes, sir.
There's then in camp Xander. There's then fight week Xander, and then there's fight night Xander.
Yes, there's a lot of
And
Xanders.
fight night Xander is a dog who likes to fight and likes to go in there, and we'll leave it all in the ring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and like Peter was saying, fight week is a very quiet week. We don't do much outside of what we need to do. I try to keep it as simple as possible. It's very routine. For 21 fights, it's been the same people, same type of environment, and we try to keep it like that every single time in. And like he said, fight week, I'm all happy till it comes to weighing day. Weighing day, I'm a little bit, upset that I can't eat. And fight night is just a whole different person. I'm locked in. I know what I have to do inside that ring, and all the smiles and all the laughing matters goes away out the window, and it's time to work.
And I'm going to say something else. He has his parents, his sister. The support that he has at home. He lives with his parents and his sister, and that support is so important. I can't express that enough. They are like another part of the unit behind the scenes. You know what I mean? And it is just it's what it takes, especially in this type of sport. Like I said, this isn't badminton. This isn't baseball. There's not 162 games, 162 fights on the schedule. Every fight is extremely meaningful. There's very little room for error.
Well, and we know anything can happen. I mean, that was the Emmanuel Stewart line. Boxing, anything can happen, and we've seen it. I mean, you could catch a headbutt, and all of a sudden it opens up a cut, and they don't notice it, and now you're sort of backpedaling and having to change your strategy a little bit, or maybe even your approach to the fight. Well, 154, a tough division. Peter and Xander Zayas, and a lot of great fighters there. I guess the marquee guy has been, but he's sort of out of the picture now. It looks like he has his sights moving up to 168 to fight Canelo with Terence Crawford. But some real tough customers in there.
Well, Jeff, speaking of Terence Crawford, what were you guys doing last fight week? I think he was in the room with you playing.
Yeah, we're playing Uno.
So Terence spent literally a full day in Xander's room playing Uno and hanging out.
Very nice. And he's kind of a low-key guy, but he seems to be very supportive.
Great guy. Every time he's around, he's always, giving us some type of story about, when he was coming up and how he grew up. And it's amazing to just listen to those stories, coming from a champion like he is, and obviously somebody that inspire somehow into boxing. He's just a great guy. So I just, I always try to listen, sit down, and be quiet, just let him speak.
No, and do you? I mean, this is the magic question, I guess, and you would have great insight into this. Moving up 2 weight classes, Peter. I don't know that would be your recommendation to fight Canelo Alvarez, who we don't know. I mean, maybe he's back to eating some of that tainted meat before he gets going. Not sure how you feel about that. So just a simple question. I'll ask both you guys this. Xander first. What chance does Terence Crawford have of beating Canelo Alvarez if indeed they do meet?
He's a great fighter. I mean, he's proven it for like, what, 3 weight classes, 2 times undisputed. So he knows what he needs to do. But moving 2 weight classes to fight the best, top 2, maybe 3 now, pound for pound, it's tough. It's very, very tough because you're not just moving to fight a champion. You're moving to fight the best, in his weight class. He's been beating everybody they put in front of him. So it's going to be a tough matchup. I don't want to pick a winner because it could go either way, but I think the weight might be a difference coming into fight night.
Do you give him any chance, Peter?
So yeah, of course I do. And the one thing that I would never underestimate is Terence's will to win. And he has a great coach in Bomac and Brian McIntyre. He's a fantastic coach. When you're consistently winning world championships and consistently creating game plans and preparing people to fight and sometimes exceed everybody's expectations, that seems like Bomac does that a lot, right? Even in the fight with Steve Nelson fighting Diego Pacheco, I mean, Steve Nelson had the fight of his life, and what I'm saying is that Bomac is going to prepare Terence Crawford for everything that Canelo is going to bring to the table. Obviously, we know Canelo is a great fighter. However, Terence is a great fighter. Both of them have been multi-division champions. Terence, 3-division champion. I think that the height and reach is almost identical.
Yes, sir.
And
actually, I think
Terence has
a longer reach.
Reach. And I mean, is the weight going to be an issue? It's only going to be an issue if Terence lets it be an issue. It's going to be an issue if he fights the type of fight that's going to allow Canelo's weight to play a role in that. The same way that I think Canelo let Bivol weight and being the bigger man play a role in that victory. So I think it depends on the type of fight he fights. I think it's going to be a fight with 2 great boxer punchers. And I think age doesn't play into it because I think they're very close in age. So look, I give both those guys a chance at winning, and I think it's going to be a great fight.
And all I hope is that I'm there front row as a world champion, just sitting and watching that great fight.
Being introduced at ringside and sitting here, world champion, WBO, the super welterweight champ, Xander Zayas. That would be great. Peter, as a manager, don't you wish you could find that same German graveyard where they've been digging up these Canelo opponents for most of the latter stages of his career?
I mean, look, I thought Berlanga fought a very good fight against Canelo, even though he lost. I think Edgar came to fight, and he got dropped. He got up. He didn't stop, kept pressing the action. I think he made it closer than a lot of people thought he would, going the distance. I thought Caleb Plant fought a good fight until he wasn't fighting a good fight. I think that because Canelo likes to stay undefeated, sometimes, we're going to get a case where he's got to fight a mandatory. And that makes it more valuable when he does fight somebody like Crawford so that all those belts are on the line.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think like when he fought, for instance, during COVID, he fought the Turkish guy.
Yeah, the one we watched here.
Well, you loaned him your cup.
Yes. I actually forgot his name.
But the point is,
they fought here at
Hard Rock. The point is that, he's going to have to do. Listen, you know who did that? Bernard Hopkins. He fought every mandatory to keep his undisputed status intact. Sometimes the fans were upset. Sometimes the media was upset. But he did it so that when those big fights were on the line, all those belts were on the line, and it meant something. So, I mean, really, when you think about it, I think other than Benavidez, I don't even know who would be interesting for Canelo to fight.
Yeah.
seriously, like I think Benavidez. Who else that he
At
hasn't
60,
fought?
at 68, nobody else. I think it's interesting for him to fight. He'll have to move up to 75, and there's some big guys up there.
Yeah. Well, he already lost to B-Ball, and better be of. Looks like he would be a tough opponent for him. Yeah, and it's interesting. The Turkish guy that you mentioned, whose name also escapes me, probably because he is Turkish, but no offense, man, to any of our Turkish friends out there watching.
Yildirim.
He had fought Glenn Johnson, our good friend Glenn Johnson. And it
Yes.
turned out to be Glenn's last fight. I think Glenn had been out of the ring for a couple of years. The Road Warrior, who also hails from South Florida, great guy. I had a chance to call a bunch of fights with Glenn and got to know him pretty well. And he had a great story in boxing also.
He was the Road Warrior.
Yeah, and he had the series there where he was the fighter of the year
You know,
when he beat Tarver and Jones.
I was at his pro debut at the Seville Hotel when he was 19 years old.
Yeah, and it's funny too because you mentioned that your mom brought you to the gym at 6, Xander, because you were being bullied. And Glenn will tell the story that the reason he started boxing kind of late in life was because his wife thought he was getting fat, and he was looking for a way to lose weight and stay in shape. So he went to a gym in Coconut Grove. I guess it was a famous gym there at the time, not quite at the level of the Fifth Street gym in Miami. But he ended up going there, and he said, just like you did, I kind of like this stuff, and. I went all the way on to become a world champion. What would be your ambition, Xander? I mean, the Fundora fight obviously is going to happen sometime. What, in the next 6 months?
No.
No?
The summer.
2-3
Probably
months.
July,
Sure.
August, maybe late July, middle
Okay,
August.
so sometime within the next 6 months, we're going to see you wearing a belt.
Yes.
I want to get. I know you don't want to reveal your strategies, but the number one question probably would be, how the hell do you get inside of this guy?
Well, he's a very crafty fighter. He's very good for his length. He's very good in the inside, but not so good in the outside. So obviously, we got a couple things to work on, or that we could do to take advantage of that. Again, game plan will develop as we go, as we have the sparring partners in front of us, so they can imitate him a little bit, so we can start seeing what works, what doesn't, what we can do, what we can't do. So I can't give you too much on it because again, it just hasn't completely developed yet. But there's definitely a lot of ideas and a lot of things we know we could do to beat Sebastian Fundora. And going back to the first question, my ambitions obviously becoming a world champion now and during the summer 2025. It's always something that I've been saying since 2 years ago at least. 2025 is going to be my year, and it's finally here. Then becoming world champion in multiple divisions, undisputed in multiple divisions. I feel like I could go up all the way to light heavyweight, and maybe if the opportunity presents itself, go up to cruiserweight, get a belt, come back down to 75. But that's a long way from now. Obviously, I have to focus on what's in front of me, and that's Sebastian Fundora making the fight happen and become our world champion.
Are you sharing that same vision, Peter?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story.
Or you're telling him, hey, listen, kid.
No. I'm going to tell you a funny story, and Xander's going to laugh. The first time that he met Bob Arum.
I already know.
So we had already had our deal in place. We had went to Las Vegas to sign his contracts and appear in court, and this was the first time that his family was going to meet Bob Arum. So I walk in the office first. I say hi to Bob. I then go and introduce Bob to Xander, Xander Zayas, etc. I then introduce him to Xander's mother, and Bob's sitting there, and Xander's mother's 6 feet tall. Bob looks up, he goes, "By the time you're done, you're going to be a heavyweight." So, when Bob saw his mom.
Yeah, he was like.
And she was in heels.
She was like at least 6'2".
Yeah. So, look, what do I think? I'm really only thinking about the summer and Xander fulfilling the first goal, which was to be a world champion. Once we accomplish that goal, we will then set our sights on the next goal. And this is a great division right now. And what's making boxing great right now is when the best fighters are fighting the best fighters. And I think that two fighters like Sebastian Fundora and Xander Zayas fighting each other is great for boxing. If there's an opportunity to fight Virgil Ortiz or an opportunity to fight a number of these really solid fighters, the IBF champion is a hell of a fighter. I think that we start to stay focused on that, win that title, and then we'll come back on the show and then we'll tell you what our next plans are.
That'd be awesome, man. I do believe it's going to happen. Having watched Fundora many, many times, the kid has a little bit of a tough chin, like I said, kind of surprising because you'd figure you could blow on this guy and knock him out. But it won't be any easy task. But from what I've seen of you, Xander, I think you're more than up to it. How complicated will the politics of boxing be, though? How much more leverage, Peter and Xander, do you feel like you'll have if indeed you do capture this WBO title? And have you felt that kind of pressure where maybe you were being shut out or being denied an opportunity? Obviously, you're still very young in your career with the 21 fights, but how complicated does it become once you become a world champion, or does it make life that much easier?
I don't think, from my perspective, and I mean, I work with every promoter, right? I have fighters with everybody, so I believe that what keeps the sport moving forward and what keeps people interested is making great fights. And I think that the era of people, I think that the era of people trying to navigate and hang on to a title, I think people are just really looking to fight the best possible fights. So, I think that I don't think it would be complicated at all. I mean,
Sure.
I think that right now we'll find a way to make the Fundora fight. I think that moving forward, if it meant fighting other champions, that we would have no problem doing that.
Not at all.
I think that there's so many great storylines. I mean, you have a Virgil Ortiz and a Xander Zayas, a Mexican and Puerto Rican at Madison Square Garden. That would be unbelievable. There's just so many great scenarios, but right now
the focus is like Peter says, Sebastian Fundora. But after I become a world champion, there's no reason for me to not make these great fights. There's a lot of fighters, like you said, in the division. There's a lot of great fights to be made, and that will start once I become a world champion.
Should be a lot of fun, and obviously well-deserved title shot upcoming for the WBO championship. Can't wait to see the contract signed and a date announced, and it's going to be great. We lost a couple, a heavyweight, of course, and maybe lesser known, but one of my favorite fighters this past week is George Foreman passed away. It kind of came as a surprise to me. I was talking to Peter, Randy Gordon, the commissioner, and we had him on this show, actually.
Good friend of ours. Yes. Randy's a good friend of ours.
Yeah, great guy, and he does a Sirius satellite show with Jerry Cooney, who made a guest appearance on the program, who said that outside of his wife, Foreman was the hardest puncher that he ever faced. I don't know if you were a fan of George Foreman, Xander, but I was curious to get both of your guys' thoughts because he started out, he was one of the most ferocious people in all of sports. And then he became just a gentleman. I think Brad Jacobs, who we mentioned before, what was instrumental in orchestrating his comeback when he was he was the executive producer of the Tuesday Night Fights. And he had him on there more often than Butterbean Ash, I think, at that time. And he somehow surprisingly knocks out Michael Moore. Peter, what were your thoughts about George Foreman? And I don't know if you want to touch on that as well, Xander.
Is a great American story. George Foreman has had, two careers in boxing, as the bad guy and the good guy.
Yeah.
And I think that his fighting style was unique. I think that, obviously we all remember, Rumble in the Jungle, right? But I mean, just the destruction that he did, Joe Frazier, and just his whole career, even his comeback, just the will to win. And let me tell you, Michael Moore was in his prime. Michael Moore was coming off the Holyfield victory, and George Foreman set him up and knocked him out. And, he had that very unique clubbing. I mean,
Yes.
I was watching an interview with Evander Holyfield recently, which has been kind of circulating on social media, where Evander was saying, man, getting hit by George Foreman was something else. It was like nothing else, right? And what can you say? I mean, George Foreman was a great fighter, a very likable commentator. I really enjoyed him on the HBO broadcasts. And condolences to his family.
Sure.
And obviously, boxing lost a great, a great person for the sport.
Were you, or now are you a boxing historian a little bit, Xander? How much do you go and dig up the history of the sport? And
Yeah, that was way before my time. But yeah, obviously, like you said, and like Peter said, he had a lot of history in the sport of boxing, fighting Muhammad Ali, becoming a world champion at, I believe, 45, 48.
Maybe like 42. I don't know. Early, but back then it was like, oh my God, he's 40? 43 maybe.
He had melatonin in that right hand. He will put people to sleep. So obviously one of the greatest heavyweights.
She's gonna steal that line, by the way.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to use that.
American heavyweight in boxing history, and somebody that brought a lot of history and a lot of great moments into the sport, and he won't be forgotten. So I want to send my condolences to the family and to the sport of boxing, because he will be missed. And it's just sad that it happened, but we gotta continue moving forward. I wish his family the best, and I just want his family to be good.
Yeah, I was starting to say, I was talking with Randy, and Randy was saying that Larry Holmes wasn't in the best of shape right now. And so when I found out on Friday that Foreman had passed away, it came like as a stunning surprise. So that was obviously a very sad moment in the sport. And then lesser publicized, but a guy that was one of my favorites. I don't know if you were a fan. Xander, you're probably too young to remember these wars that he had with Boom Boom Mancini, but Livingstone Bramble, I don't know if he was among your favorites, Peter, but great lightweight fighter.
Yeah, I didn't know he passed away.
Yeah, he passed away.
I know Greg Calgan passed away recently, right? Or is that right or no?
Yeah, very sad. I mean, we lost a lot of good ones, and there's nothing. I mean, no sort of ceremonial salute or salutation in sport than when they toll 10 for a fighter that passed away. And it's just a very eerie feeling. And that bell just kind of lingers there at the end after it rings for the 10th time. And I would imagine they'll be doing that at fights all over the country. Who besides the Puerto Rican fighters, Xander, who are some of your favorites that are on the scene today?
That are on the scene right now, like as
active fighters.
Active fighters?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I have to go with Canelo, Terence, Crawford. I like Alexander Usyk. I like Naoya Inoue. There's a lot of guys that Bebop. I like Bebop style. There's a lot of guys that I'm really a fan of, and that I learned one or two things from. And I'm a big fan of boxing, so I try to watch boxing every time that there is. So, I'm a very good fan.
Him and his dad messaged me, "Are you watching the fights?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "What fights?" They're like, "Oh, there could be a fight anywhere, and these two are watching them."
Yes.
Have they dangled Tim Tszyu in front of you at any time?
Actually, we were looking to spar him 3 years ago when we were in Australia, and unfortunately, that didn't happen. I don't want to say it was because of excuses from his team, but in a way, it was.
And we invited him when he came down to camp here. Who did he fight?
Was that
Fundora?
Yes, that's when
somebody fought. We invited him to do.
But he was getting ready to fight Thurman because that's what he was supposed to fight.
Right.
Thurman got injured. That's when Fundora came in. But we invited him when he was in Florida. That didn't happen, which is a shame. Hopefully, I could get my hands on him in that actual ring, in an actual fight.
I saw the interview that you were giving, one of, I guess, many that night of the Fundora fight in Las Vegas on Saturday. And where did you find guys that could sort of replicate, his size and what he can do. I mean, you mentioned Xander. You're bringing in like 2 sparring partners that looked like
We're
Fundora.
not going to give you their names.
We're not going to give you names, but
I mean, where do you find guys like that? Under
you-
54
you-
pounds,
you-
6'5"?
in the NBA summer
that's
league.
why that's why we have that's why I have a great team. They do their homework and they look on BoxRec name by name, height by height, and make sure that the guy that we're bringing is similar, because you will never find the exact same guy. Nobody's going to be Sebastian Fundora. Nobody's going to be Xander Zayas. So I feel like we could find somebody that is very, very similar to the style we're fighting. And we did that. We found 2 guys that we know can imitate Sebastian Fundora very well. And I know they will help me, and they will allow me to grow and be ready for whenever that fight happens.
Are the preparations always the same? I mean, you have to go out and be you, obviously, Peter, and Xander's got his own style, and it's remarkable the versatility that he has in the ring and those body punches. I felt pain in watching your last fight. You were really just going to the body like almost a lost art. The body punching was fantastic and set the pace in that fight. The training methods change based on your opponent at all?
Well, every fight is different, so every training camp preparing for a fighter is completely different, but in a way it's the same. It's the same work ethic, it's the same ambition. You want to look good, you want to work on the things that you need to work on, you want to develop those things, you want to improve your skill in every aspect. So I feel like yes, it's the same, but no, it's completely different, because obviously every fight, every preparation is different, so you have to prepare to who's in front of you.
How much has social media changed the approach in boxing, Peter? I mean, would have a champion, whatever, and there was a time where you had like 13 weight divisions and 2 alphabet soup organizations, so there were 26 champions essentially in the world, and you didn't really have that much contact with them. You'd see them. Some guys were better at promoting themselves than others, but now, I mean, it's open season on virtually everybody. How has that impacted the game? And Xander, how do you go about handling the various things? We talked about it earlier. There's always criticisms, but does any of that impact your thinking, your approach, your confidence? How has social media impacted the game?
In a way, it doesn't impact it, because I have my dad controls and runs my social media. So
he does a great job at it.
He does a great job.
Oh, yeah, good.
I try to stay away
Does a
from
really
it.
good job.
Obviously, I do go in and comment to my fans and interact with my fans a little bit. But most of the time, he's the one making the post. He's the one, handling everything that has to do with my social media, because it's what he tells me, and what we've been saying since day one. My job is to fight. My job is to prepare and be ready and focused to go out there and come out victorious and healthy. And I'll let them worry about everything else outside of that.
How important is that, Peter, in managing a fighter?
Well, I mean, I have managed so many fighters during this era of social media. Some of them I can't control. I bet. There'll be the rare occasion that I'll text Xander because Top Rank might have texted me and said, take down this particular post or whatever. But in large part, he's very good. I have some people who are non-existent on it. I have some people who I wish never picked it up. It's still when we look in history, it's still in its infancy, right? So we're still in that. And for him, he was born in an era where he doesn't know a time when it didn't exist. So I think it's extremely important to also build their brand. I think that it also, allows them to convey the message of what their brand is. I'm not going to mention the brand. However, there's a brand out there that sponsors a lot of people in boxing, a handful of fighters, and they were interested in working with Xander, and he messaged me and said, it's not part of my brand. It's not part of what I've been building for 5 years. I said, fair enough. And, we don't, he doesn't just take the money because of that, because it's an easy money for social media. So social media, depending on how you use it, he's never really had a beef on social media. Although, now he's a target. So, he makes sure he doesn't let people get away with stuff, but he doesn't start stuff. He finishes it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
He's the king of finishing it.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's no need for me to go out on social media. I'll just tell Peter, contact this promoter. I want to fight this guy, and that's it. Simple as that. I mean, social media, it's cool to talk and type and be behind the screen and saying whatever you want. Can you do it when we're in the ring? Can everything you just talked about, can you back it up when you're in the ring? So for me, it doesn't matter what people say outside of the ring, because when we in there, it's you and me. There's no coaches, there's no promoters, it's just you and me. Who's the best guy? And every time in for 21 fights, I've been showing who's the best guy.
And Defo, everybody's an expert.
Yes. Well, I've been in that
all
position.
sports. Everybody's an expert on social media. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody gets the platform to say what they want. So it's, you just gotta you can't
gotta,
really
you
brush
have
it off.
Maybe before you didn't have that, because the guys that now are commentating the stuff that they're commentating, maybe they wouldn't have said it if they have, or they won't say it if they have the fighter in front of them. Which again, around now is easy because you can just say it behind the screen. Nobody's gonna catch up to you. Nobody's gonna go visit you at your house because they don't know you. So I feel like I try to stay away from it, because none of that is going to bring me any growth into my life. So I try to stay away from it and focus in the things that I can focus on.
All right. You recently you mentioned the Paris Games. Did you not, Peter, sign one of the prospects out of the Olympics recently and get involved? How many other fighters are in your stable?
Right now, I think 20.
Wow.
I have a brand new world champion, Jasmine Artiga. She won the WBA super flyweight title this past Saturday. And some great contenders. Yankiel Rivera from Puerto Rico. He was in the 2020 Olympics. He's now going to fight for the interim world title for the WBA. I'm part of Andy Cruz's management, who also was in the 2020 Olympics, won the gold medal against Keyshawn Davis. He should be fighting for world titles soon. Henry LeBron, another undefeated fighter who's a top 10 contender. Charlie Sheehy, who just fought on Saturday night as well and had a win. He's 11-0 with 6 KOs. He was the alternate to Keyshawn Davis for the Tokyo Olympics. And then I have a lot of guys developing. I have Aaron Aponte, who's a local from Hialeah Gardens, and Aaron is still a developing prospect. Actually, a good friend of Xander's.
Sure.
And I have Franchone Cruz DeZern, who's the former undisputed current unified super middleweight female champion. Danilo Diaz, another local kid who's developing. I have WBO African super featherweight champion, John Laye, who's actually coming into town, will be starting camp here with us as well. I hope I'm not leaving too many people out, but I mean, you get the picture.
Yeah, no, you're going to be busy.
I'm no Brett Tesla from Tesla Sports. However, we're doing our thing over here.
How tight knit of a group is it? Because I remember covering boxing in LA, and I had a couple of friends, and they were part of a smaller stable, maybe 4 or 5 guys, all under the management and training of one Benny Giorgino, a real character going back in the day in the 70s and 80s. And they were a tight knit group. I mean, is that important to be able to lean on the other guys in the stable?
Well, not everybody that he mentioned trains together. Not everybody has the same coach.
Yeah.
But the guys that do train together, we are very close. I wouldn't say we are the closest, but we are close to where when we train, we try to motivate each other. We try to push each other. I consider them my friend. I bet and hope they consider me their friends, because we try to help each other inside and outside the ring. I'm always available to talk to the guys and to
especially the guys that Javier,
for sure, the guys that
there's a handful of guys that Javier trains, and they come into camp, and they train together, they go to strength and conditioning together, they run together. So
I mean, you living with these people for 8 to 10 weeks. So the only thing you could do is become friends. Why be enemies when we have to see you every single day of my life?
Good stuff. And you touched on women's boxing. I guess it really got a much larger focus. Of course, you can go back to the coal miner's daughter, kind of put it on
Yeah,
the map there when Tyson was incarcerated, and Don King was pushing that aspect of it. I always found that it's kind of like women's college basketball. That it doesn't seem to be the depth to really support it, but we're seeing that growing. And you mentioned that you have a women's world champion. We saw Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. I mean,
They're
stealing
fighting again in
gold.
July.
July 12th.
Yeah,
You know,
last
and
time.
they put on really two hell of fights. The one in Madison Square Garden, which was razor thin, and that was a close fight, and then the one on the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson Netflix show. I mean, that stole the show.
Yes.
Thank God they had that fight on the card.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been a disaster.
I'm sure they're going to sell out Madison Square Garden again. I would say that there's an aspect to women's boxing right now with certain fighters and fights, just like when the women's Team USA soccer team was really bringing young girls and a lot of fans into the sport because they were so successful. I think that fights like, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano are bringing it mainstream, opening that up to young girls that might say, oh, you know what? That's interesting. I might want to do that. And I feel, you mentioned Christy Martin. I was there.
Yeah.
I was working for Don King at that time in my 20s. And I was there to see Christy fight all those fights. The level of she was a great fighter and she would have competed in today's age, no problem. But the level of competition today is really good.
Yes,
And really, really strong. And so, we see a lot of great female fights taking place in every weight class. I mean, even the one that we saw when you fought 2 fights ago with Michaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan.
They're actually fighting this weekend.
They're fighting the rematch. That was a great fight. Sinisa Estrada and Yocasta the girl from Costa Rica. Those were great fights. There's a lot of
there's a lot of great fights. There's a lot of great fights.
Very competitive
that are happening now in women's boxing, and it's amazing to see it. It's amazing to see the growth and to see the everybody supporting it.
Yeah, it's really evolved. All right, well, short of signing Fundora, we hope you get a Jake Paul fight. I would love to. Everybody's waiting for somebody to knock this guy's head off, and I think, Xander, you have the goods to do it for sure at whatever weight he meets you at. So I want to thank both of you. It was a pleasure. I really enjoy watching your fights, Xander, and you could see what a gentleman you are, even, especially after you make that transformation and come back after the fight is over and distinguish yourself as just a really, really good guy. And Peter, I know you wouldn't handle anybody else, but the top class individuals. So we wish you all the luck in the world. I hope you keep us posted on negotiations for the Fundora fight. And hopefully you'll be talking to you again when you're a world champion.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much. Xander Zayas, Peter Kahn. Outstanding job, gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us here on Conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, Devo.
All right. Very good. Xander Zayas, Peter Kahn with us. And that's going to wrap up.